Hello and welcome to the Eagle Eye Focus Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host Louis DB at DB Sports Talk, and I'm pleased to be joined by my producer Sam Ty at Sammy DB Sports.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, today is Wednesday, so training camp is starting off in 2 days. The Philadelphia Eagles start off at the NovaCare Complex under Chip Kelly, the first year head coach for his first training camp. And there's many headlines, many positions that are being in battles for the starting jobs. Quarterback is obviously the biggest one with Michael Vick, Nick Foles, Matt Barkley, Dennis Dixon in the race for the starting quarterback job. And Friday is going to be the first time that the pads go on, and there will be Sundays will be the hitting practices. Practices will be at 1 o'clock. So you can check that out at PhiladelphiaEagles.com. A lot of headlines today on the podcast, but we're going to talk about first the cornerback battle, which is very interesting to see. The Eagles' whole secondary is wiped out from last year when they had Nnamdi Asomugha, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, Nate Allen, and Kurt Coleman as the starters. Instead, this year they went out and got Kerry Williams from the Baltimore Ravens, a Super Bowl contributor from the Ravens. They got Bradley Fletcher from the Rams, who was kind of buried in the depth chart last year because Janoris Jenkins and Cortland Finnegan were such good corners last year, made one of the best duos in the NFL. And they got him, and then they also have Brandon Boykin, who's coming into his second year as an Eagles corner. Very rocky season last year, ups and downs. His bright spot was week 2 against the Ravens when he totally shut down Anquan Bolden. But then you saw some of his underdevelopment when he got torched by Larry Fitzgerald in week 3. So there's many, and then the 7th round they got Jordan Poyer, who's definitely going to compete for the slot spot. Then you got bench pretty much depth players that are going to be solid backups in Curtis Marsh, who's another year in developing as an Eagle, and Brandon Hughes, who I think was very good last year when he was on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I just posted an article, training camp preview on the cornerbacks, and my predicted depth chart would be Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher on the outsides, and honestly I think Brandon Boykin's going to be the slot, but Jordan Poyer definitely is going to be in it. The corners, I think that's how it's going to work out. It's going to be interesting to see how Chip Kelly wants his corners, press or off. So, I mean, it's going to be, I just think that they fit the scheme well, Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher. They're more press coverage corners. And they also can get turnovers, which was a bad spot from the Eagles last season. So, some headlines for the podcast in a couple of days. We got Friday, we got Kwame Brown-Jones, who is from ESPN New Hampshire, who has been talking a lot about Dennis Dixon and the Eagles quarterback battle. We'll have him Friday on the podcast, so discussing the quarterback battle. As well, I think I've expressed my opinion on the Eagles quarterback battle. As I've said, I like Dennis Dixon to be the guy. And no one else really, I just found this guy on Twitter, is the only really one that supports that opinion, because most people, and I think Sammy can agree, that most people are saying Michael Vick and Nick Foles.
Yeah.
And not many people are really going in depth and looking at how Matt Barkley and Dennis Dixon can do. And I think it's going to be interesting to see really how, I mean, you have to earn whatever you have. Right now, Chip Kelly said that the depth chart's written in sand, meaning there's really no depth chart at all, and everybody can earn a spot. And I think once training camp and preseason pans out, that's when you're going to have to start looking at who's playing better. I mean, your play on the field is really going to show if you should be playing or not your name. Obviously, Michael Vick's the main guy because everybody knows him. Oh, yeah, Michael Vick. He should definitely start, but you don't honestly know what the other guys can bring to the table. And I know our producer Sam Ty is the first ever podcast. He's a Chargers fan, and there's no quarterback battle there with Phillip Rivers. So I'm just going to compare it to that. Whereas the Chargers right now have Mike McCoy as their new head coach, and the Eagles have a Chip Kelly. But the Chargers, I think, have a more sturdy offense with Phillip Rivers compared to. I'm just comparing to how the quarterback battle should be panning out. Where the Chargers have an asserted player at the position, the Eagles are going to need that before Week 1 because you can't have it juggled in the air who's going to be the starter. Before you have to start getting down a game plan for the Redskins. But you have to have your quarterback in place for that. So, by the way, how do you think the Chargers are going to do this year? I know you're not.
I don't know. Maybe the same as always, but we'll have to see in training camp.
What is the same as always?
Close to making the playoffs, second or third in their division. I don't really think they're gonna come on top again or this year.
Yeah. So all training camps start for most teams this week. Fantasy football, most drafts are going on for the Eagles. I think, and that's another thing. I think most people want to see for their own fantasy football sakes that Michael Vick starts because he can run, and he has a rocket arm, and the Eagles have a lot of weapons. I honestly think no matter who's at quarterback, they're going to be provided with weapons, that there will be no excuse as to why you're not producing. So let's move on from that. I could talk about the quarterback position all day, but we'll save that for when we have Kwame Brown-Jones onto the podcast, which will be again Friday. And also we're having EaglesAddict.com on Monday. So let's move on to the defensive side of the ball, where it's a whole new scheme. They fired Juan Castillo, the defensive coordinator, last year, and they hired Billy Davis coming in from Alabama to be their defensive coordinator. They're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4, which is a totally different scheme. Instead of you having 3 inside linebackers and 4 defensive linemen, you're going to have 2 outside linebackers, 3 interior linemen, and then you're going to have 2 inside linebackers, which is a totally different scheme. Many Eagles players are not used to that, which is a very interesting point I made on Twitter, is Trent Cole, who has been the certified defensive end for the Eagles, who's been averaging double-digit sacks every year, except for last year when he only had 3. But that was just because of how bad the defense was. The 3-4, he's been asked to switch to outside linebacker, and many people don't think Cole can switch to that because you're going to be covering. Sometimes you're going to have to go back into coverage, while other times you're going to be pass rushing, which is obviously his strength. But I think, honestly, when people are saying he should be cut because he's not fit the scheme more Connor Barwin does, that's why they went out and got him from Houston. But Dwight Freeney last year from the Colts, who's now a Charger, switched over from a 4-3 defensive end to a 3-4 outside linebacker, and he did well. I don't know the exact stats, Sam, if you can pull out Dwight Freeney's stats from last season, but he switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4 position, and that's a hard thing to do, but the Colts asked him to do it, and I believe he was very productive, because and now going over to the Chargers, he's still going to be sticking to that 3-4 position. Why can't Trent Cole do that when, honestly, their statures and their size is about the same? Did you pull up Dwight Freeney's stats?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Give me sacks first.
Sacks? It was a 5.0.
So 5 sacks and a 3-4 is actually not bad. Give me tackles. Total tackles.
10.
10 total tackles last year? Are you sure?
Wait.
Total tackles. Give me. I don't know if that's for sure. Dwight Freeney stats from last season. So only 10 tackles clearly is not good for what he was. So maybe he wasn't as productive as I thought. But 5 sacks though is still good. And I think Trent Cole has more ability than Dwight Freeney. He's younger, and that's my reasoning for that. But he was productive last year as he was a veteran leader, and he also provided good coverage skills. Honestly, you're not going to expect a 3-4 outside linebacker to get many tackles, so I don't know if that's so terrible, but I mean, he did battle some injuries last year as well, but I'm just kind of comparing how the transition is going to have to go for Trent Cole, and he's a much younger player. So, but let's look at the 3-4 defensive line, because, I mean, people are predicting the depth chart as Trent Cole on the outside. You're going to have Connor Barwin coming over from Houston as the other 3-4 outside linebacker. But it's the interior that I'm really interested about. Fletcher Cox, the 12th round pick last year, the defensive tackle, is now moving over to defensive end. And he's going to be asked much more to run stop more than pass rush. Last year he did have 6 sacks, which was atop the Eagles in the stats. So, I mean, I think he's definitely going to be the one defensive end. The nose tackle, I think they definitely brought Isaac Sapawaga from the San Francisco 49ers to be that starting nose tackle. And then you have on the other side, you have Benny Logan, maybe. I mean, he was the 3rd round pick out of LSU. You might have, I mean, I think Cedric Thornton's definitely going to be in there. He was very productive last season. And then I think you might have a dark horse to make it. Maybe, I mean, maybe you have Antonio Dixon start at nose tackle, maybe move Isaac Sapawaga to defensive end if you want to go big on the interior. So I think that's how it could end up panning out. So the 3-4 is interesting. I think it's going to be much better, much more improved. I mean, last year the Eagles were, I think, like tied for 31st in points allowed. So they were one of the worst, if not the worst, defense in the NFL. So they're definitely going to have to move to that. All right, let's go back to the offensive side of the football. And I know today's 2 days before training camp, so I'm just trying to fit everything in, all the question marks that are heading into the headlines, into training camp this season. So let's go back to the offensive side where we're going to look at the wide receivers, which is probably the deepest position in the on the team right now. You have Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin as your 2 starting receivers. I think Jason Avant, he's at risk of not being the slot guy, because I think Aurelius Ben, who came over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that they traded for, is definitely going to be a slot guy. And if you could pull up Aurelius Ben's statistics from the Buccaneers, if you could, Sam Ty, kind of using the producer in his first day for some statistical basis, but because I think he definitely could be a potential for the starting slot guy, because he has the same stature as Jason Avant. he's very similar in stature to Jason Avant, Aurelius Ben is, but I think he has better receiving skills. I mean, Jason Avant has had 1 touchdown in the past 3 seasons. That's not a very productive. I don't think Chip Kelly's going to like that. But this is the one reason Jason Avant might be the starter, is because he's such a great blocker. So what are the stats for Aurelius Ben in the past 3 seasons? Give me each by year, yards and touchdowns. I know he hasn't been very productive because he just really hasn't seen the field all that much.
In 2012, he had 26 yards and 0 touchdowns.
Which was probably due to injury or just not starting, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
2011, he had 441 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Okay, so that's not bad for what the receivers were. But those 3 touchdowns, I just want to... those are hopefully going to contribute better to what Jason Avant has. Give me one more year.
And in 2010, his yards were 395 and 2 touchdowns.
Okay, so it's not very good. Not very. Those aren't sexy numbers, obviously, if anything. But Jason Avant honestly has not been that much either. Can you look at receptions for Aurelius Ben? For
the past 3 seasons?
Yeah.
2012, he had 4 receptions.
Which, yeah, he didn't play.
2011, he had 30 receptions.
Okay, yeah.
And in 2010, he had 25 receptions.
Okay, that's what I'd like to see. 30 receptions and only so many snaps he's played, because the Buccaneers really don't run a 3-receiver set that much. He had that many receptions, though, so clearly the quarterbacks were targeting him, which is why I kind of like him to get a lot of playing time for the Eagles. I'm going to look at a guy at receiver who, honestly, really, I don't think has a need in Philadelphia, and that's Damaris Johnson, the second-year guy out of Tulane. Last year he was somewhat productive. Yeah, so, and I think Damaris Johnson, I mean, I don't know, I'm going to have my stat guy pull it up again, but he's almost a replica of Deshaun Jackson, only slower, and he's not as big, and I think he's not as complete of a receiver, and I think when you're wasting a spot on him, that means you're going to have to cut a guy like Riley Cooper or a Finney Moma, who's like 6'8". No, and you need size on the depth chart because we have our small guys in Jeremy Maclin and Deshaun Jackson. What are the stats on Damaris Johnson last year?
For receptions, he had 19.
Okay.
Yards, 256 yards.
Any touchdowns?
No.
Okay. So, I mean, he was in and out. Obviously, last year was a complete disaster for the Eagles and Andy Reid. So, but honestly, when he was out there, I kind of liked what I saw. But again, you have that guy. You have Deshaun Jackson, who's gonna punt return, who's going to be that slot guy, who's gonna be able to line up in all different spots. I just don't see the need for Damaris Johnson. You have, okay, so I'm going to do the predicted depth chart. You have Deshaun Jackson, obviously, as the 1 wideout. Jeremy Maclin, still at the 2. He's in his contract year. He's going to have a lot to prove this year. Then you have Jason Avant, let's say, 3. I think Aurelius Ben is going to be 4. Then I think you have 1 or 2 more spots. And I think Riley Cooper's a lock to make the roster because of his size and how many red zone touchdowns he had, which was 3, and only so much amount of time he played. You got to understand, too, when you look at stats, that not all the yards are going to be what you see. Numbers do lie sometimes because he did not get enough snaps to be out there enough. I think he's definitely out there. And then there's that one spot. And are you going to keep Damaris Johnson other than Fanny Moma? And I know a lot of people don't know who that is, but he is the rookie coming out of Boston College this year. He tore his ACL last season, so he didn't get to play for Boston College. He's 6'8". He honestly, I mean, that's the size of basketball players. That's almost the size of Kevin Durant. That is what you need on the depth chart when you need taller guys that aren't going to get injured and that are going to be huge for the red zone. 2 years ago, people were barking up the tree of the Eagles wanting Plaxico Burress, who's around the same size. We have a younger version of him. So you have your Plaxico Burress. Develop him. Let him sit behind on the bench. Watch him learn from Jason Avant, Aurelius Ben, and Riley Cooper, and learn how to get into the red zone. Learn how to run routes. He's very raw, but his talent is there. It's just the size. That size is so intriguing to just keep on the roster. I don't want to let that go. And I think just Damaris Johnson just doesn't. I don't see the need. And I think people definitely disagree with me, which we've had discussions over Twitter about, because of how electric he is. And in case Deshaun Jackson gets hurt again like he did last year, we had that backup. But you can find guys like Damaris Johnson in the free agency a dime a dozen. Go out and trade for Dexter McCluster. Go out and get another Danny Amendola, which I think we have on our roster in Shepard. So, I mean, you can find guys like that. Go get Chad Hall again if you need Deshaun Jackson gets hurt. I just don't see the need to keep another one of those guys on the roster. So, yeah, that's the receiver in a nutshell. Not really, it's kind of a big nutshell, but so let's go to special teams. And yes, not many people like special teams, but it's the interesting position at punt returner and kick returner. Last year it was Brandon Boykin, kick returner, and the punt returner was Damaris Johnson, who was taking over for Deshaun Jackson as they were trying to keep him as healthy as possible, which did not work out well. Neither one was very productive. They both struggled, mainly probably because of the blocking, but I don't know. I think it's kind of a little bit of both. Damaris Johnson, I think Deshaun Jackson needs to punt return this year. Look what he did in 2010. The miracle in the New Meadowlands. That was all Deshaun Jackson. Do you think Damaris Johnson could have did that? I don't think so. And the year before that, Deshaun Jackson had 4 punt returning touchdowns. That's the most in any NFL season. He's the only player ever in the Pro Bowl to go in at 2 positions, receiver and punt returner. You need to stick that electricity there. Take a chance. We need to start winning games. You got to score points. Chip Kelly's all about scoring points on all 3 sides of the football. Quick returner is a little bit more complicated because you have Brandon Boykin. You might want to get another look, but then you have guys like Felix Jones, who you got over from the Dallas Cowboys. He's definitely a kick return guy. He's a very good in that aspect of the game. You have, honestly, you have electric guys. Like if Damaris Johnson makes the roster, you're going to want to put him in there. And I think that's around it. I mean, maybe Bryce Brown, though. I think he's the wildcat in order to be at the kick returning position because he's so physically. He's big and he's one of the fastest players on the team, if not the fastest. I know Deshaun Jackson will probably say otherwise. I think you might want to give the running backs a look at kick returning and Bryce Brown, Felix Jones, but not only Felix Jones, but Chris Polk, who's got some size, and I think that could really use that kick returning. He's got some underrated speed. It's just interesting to see what they're going to do at returning spots because you need to start scoring some points. Last year we had 0 touchdowns in that aspect, and I think the biggest run was for 20 yards. So I think that the special teams, I think it should be Deshaun, and I think it should be Felix Jones. And I think you'll be able to stay consistent with that all season long. Just make the blocking good. And that's another reason, and I know I'm rambling right now, but another reason why I'm going to go back to receivers, you want Afani Moma on the roster. He's 6'8", like I've already said. Almost 200 pounds. You need that guy in blocking on special teams. You need your backups to be able to play special teams, and that's why I like him better than Damaris Johnson. If Damaris Johnson doesn't win the returning job, he's not going to block. So I think that's why you need to keep him instead. And that's just a little thing about special teams. I know there's not much to talk about on that aspect of the game. So yeah, that's that. And one more update. Victor Cruz. I know this is kind of going back a little bit. I'm going to stick around in the NFC East. As Victor Cruz signed a 5-year deal with the Giants. And another reason why you want to get your corners ready, because Hakeem Nicks is now coming back healthy. Victor Cruz has his money, so they're both coming into training camp, fully ready to go. The receivers in the NFC East are loaded. You got the worst probably ones of all are Pierre Garçon and Josh Morgan at Washington, but they're still good. You pull up Pierre Garçon's stats from last year, and then Hakeem Nicks and Victor Cruz is one of the best receiving duos of the league, and then you have in Dallas Dez Bryant and Miles Austin and Jason Witten, who had over 1,000 yards last year as a tight end. That's incredible, and I think that that's definitely going to be. Give me the stats for Pierre Garçon.
44 receptions, 633 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
And how many games did he play? Do you know that to be exact? Games started.
10.
10, exactly. He missed 6 games, which means he can't stay healthy. Out of all those teams, who do you think has the best receiving core? The Giants, Cowboys, or Redskins? Cowboys, you have Dez Bryant and Miles Austin. Giants, Victor Cruz, Hakeem Nicks.
Giants.
Yeah, I would say Giants too. So that's why I'm saying you need to keep the corners. You need to keep the corners ready to go because those guys are ready, and you need to be press coverage. I don't think Off's going to work on Victor Cruz because of his raw speed. I don't think you're going to be able to catch up with him if he breaks out. So that's that about the corners. Back to the corners. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter podcast as I'm trying to just get everything together while training camp's about to be started. Get this up on the blog. By the way, eaglesportstalk.blogspot.com is where you can find all this. I'm sure you're there now, hence why you're listening to it. But I'm just trying to get everything going because we have a couple guests in a couple days. Training camp starts Friday. It's going to be great. I can't wait for that. A lot of headlines. It's going to be fun to watch. It's a completely different team. This is the most fun I think any Eagles fan has had. Because it's the same old boring thing with Andy Reid every single year. Same starting lineup. Same old routine in Lehigh. I like that it's in Philadelphia this year. I think that's really going to actually help. I think the fans are going to be able to come down more this year. So that's that. 2 more things. Let's go to the tight ends, where Brent Selleck is obviously still there, who's been the starter for the past 5 seasons since Donovan McNabb's been in town. You have James Casey, who you got from Houston, who's probably one of the most versatile players in the NFL. You can line him up at tight end, fullback, slot receiver, running back. I mean, this guy, honestly, I don't want to mention his name so premature, but he's kind of like an Aaron Hernandez versatility on the field. I think because he can line up in so many different aspects of the offense. So I think he's definitely going to be a huge factor. Then you went in the second round and got Zach Ertz out of Stanford, who's going to be dominant, I think, in my opinion. And I think that he reminds me of Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham, whereas you can put him in the red zone, but he has that speed that you can just put it up and he'll go get it. And I think he might be one of our biggest deep threats this year. Look what he did in Stanford last year with a quarterback that really was not all that well in his first year starting. Obviously, he didn't get to play with luck because Kobe Fleener was there starting. Stanford has had a lot of good tight ends that they've brought up. So then you have him, and then I don't think Clay Harbor makes the roster unless you want to keep 4 tight ends. But that means you're not going to keep another receiver or corner. And I just don't think that would be smart. I think Clay Harbor's not going to be hitting the field anytime soon. But the question is, how are they going to use all these tight ends? I think Brent Selleck is going to be the starter as of right now because I think Zach Ertz is definitely going to assert himself at the position. And then you have James Casey, who's going to line up everywhere. He's going to be playing fullback a lot, and he's going to be playing. You might have sometimes 3 tight end sets with Brent Selleck, Zach Ertz, and James Casey. So pull up one more James Casey statistics last year from the Houston Texans because I really am interested to see how many times you can get him the ball in a game. This is going to be a track meet in the offense, how fast it's going to go. You want to give Deshaun Jackson the ball. You obviously want to give your best player, McCoy, the ball. Give me the stats for James Casey last year. I know it wasn't a lot because he lined up in more positions than just tight end. Give me a little bit of the numbers.
6 yards, 0 touchdowns. He played 16 games.
Wait, receiving only 6 yards?
Oh, I'm looking at rushing.
Oh, rushing, yeah. That's
all right, wait.
But he can also do that.
330 yards.
Okay.
3 touchdowns, and 34 receptions.
And that's without being used much by Houston. If you can get that much in 3 touchdowns, boost that up by probably 4 more touchdowns because he's probably going to be running the football, which he only had 6 yards like he said last year. So that's that. I just think, you're going to have times where they're all going to line up in 3 spots. Zach Ertz can honestly line up at receiver too, though. You might have times where it is, which is why I don't think you need to keep as many receivers. You could have Deshaun on the outside, Jeremy Maclin. Then in the 2 slots, you could have Zach Ertz and James Casey. When you have playmakers like this that can do other things, that's why Chip Kelly brought all these guys in and kept some of the guys that were already on the roster. All right, so one more thing is free agency, which is obviously still occurring. There's still some guys in free agency that the Eagles could bring in case of an injury or in case you just don't see what you see at the position. And I'm going to move over to the safety position real fast, and that's where you have Earl Wolf's your 5th-round pick out of North Carolina State, which I think is definitely going to be pretty productive this year. You brought in Patrick Chung and Sean Phillips. No, not Sean Phillips. He was a Charger. Not Sean Phillips. I believe it was Kenny Phillips from the Giants, who's definitely, I think, going to start if he can stay healthy. And then you have the 2 starters last year, Nate Allen and Kirk Coleman, who just aren't. I think they're done, in my opinion. And so if none of those guys, if Patrick Chung and Kenny Phillips can't stay healthy, bring in Quentin Michael from the Eagles, who used to be an Eagle. He was released by the Rams, who now drafted T.J. McDonald in the 2nd round from USC. Bring him in, let him start next to Earl Wolf. I think that would be a really good lineup, and I think that's the one free agent that would probably be a good fit in Philadelphia. So that's going to wrap it up. Sam, Ty, anything else to put in?
Nope.
All right, cool. So that's going to do it for today's Eagle Eye Focus podcast. Check us out at eaglesportstalk.blogspot.com. Also, check out my articles. I'm a fantasy writer for GetRealFootball.com. Follow me at DB Sports Talk for all your Eagles updates. Follow Sam at
Sammy DB Sports.
All right, for all your NFL updates. And that's going to do it.